What the heck here? Is it because it's full or what? I'll have to read it later on that later. Hey, all right, everyone. Good evening. Well, I found some stories. It's called 10 Serial Killers Who Have Never Been Caught. This was written back in June 6th of 2024. So, this makeshift memorial for victims in Gallo Beach murders stands alone, Ocean Parkway. And it's in New York City. The Long Island killer is still at large. Well, here you go. There's something irresistible, macabre about serial killers that was long fascinated humans since early days of the newspaper. Perhaps it's a psychological fascination offered by someone who could do something so far outside the bounds of social acceptance, or it might be the fear of readers to get from wondering about the tiny chance the person working at their local grocery store may have the most chilling secrets. But the stories that really keep the public up night, or at least make the average person triple check their front doors, docks, are the serial killers who haven't been caught. While it's unsettling to read about the act committed by serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, it's just as engrossing to speculate about the ones still out at large, or the one who are so skilled we don't even know they're out there. There are 10 of the most chilling stories of serial killers who have never been caught and may forever weigh with their crime. So the content here, you got the babysitter killer, you got the highway of tear killers, biblical John, the alphabet killer, the West Mass bone collector, servant girl, Long Island killer, and the Black Door. And well, we already know this about the Zodiac killer and Jack the Ripper. Those two are done. These others, I don't know. Let's find out. So the babysitter killer. This is what the babysitter killer looks like. Clockwise from the top, Jill Robertson, 12. Mark Steuben, 12. Christine, 10. And Timothy King, 11. And all above, all believed to have been killed by the babysitter killer. The police catch its center between 1967 to 1977. The Oakland County child killer, also known as the babysitter killer, is an unidentified serial killer who murdered at least 4 children in Oakland County, Michigan, between 76 and 77. The killer macabre alias comes from the fact that he bathes each child before committing the crime, which leads the FBI profile to posit that the killer had some form of twisted parent instinct. So the killer chance to target children gripped the parents who were out of Michigan and spawned dozens of neighborhood watch incentive. Despite a few promising leads, including the discovery of a vehicle suspect to belonging to the killer, the cause remains open. The case remains open, unsolved. The most recent development was in 2012 when the investigators managed to create a DNA profile of the killer, but did not match anyone arrested in conjoining with the case, or anyone within the police system for that matter. Now, you have the highway tears killer. So, Canada Route 16, which connected Prince George and Prince Rupert, is called the Highway Tears because it's estimated that as many as 40 First Nation women and girls have been murdered and disappeared on the stretch of that road. While the modern day serial killer may be thought in primary as the United States phenomenon, Jack the Ripper, notwithstanding. Now, Canada has had its fair share of heinous murders, including more than a few that remains unsolved. Perhaps the most infamous are the Highway of Tears, murder in the British Columbia. The highway is the 450 miles stretch of the highway between Highway 16 and between Prince George and Prince Rupert. It has the unfortunate designation of being the site of the at least 18 possible as 40 murders or disappearance between 69 to 2011. Mostly indigenous women. Since the murder spawned 50 years, investigators believe multiple killers were patrolling the highway. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police found only enough evidence to prosecute one of the murderers, leaving the other 17 cases in their preview unsolved. Unfortunately, investigators have concluded the predator whereabouts over the decades in question means he could only be responsible for two of the other killings, most. So it's likely that the other killer or killers remain at large. Bible John, spearing Scotland's most intensive manhunt. The answer of who exactly is Bible John has shifted over the years, but the serial killer identified has remained a mystery in the 50-something years since the murder of Patricia Docker, 1968, and Gemma McDonald, and Helen Puttock in 1969, all their late 20s and early 30s. All three victims were beaten and raped before their murders after meeting the killer. The same popular Glasgow nightclub, the Barlin Ballroom. The few details known in this case comes from Helen's sister Jan, who shared a taxi with her sister and supposed killer on the night of Helen's murder. Jan's information helped investigators form a psychologist's profile. The killer who supposedly made frequent references to the Bible. Hence, his name is unfortunately Jan died in 2010, and she was the only witness associated with the case. The chances of finding the true identity Bible John are the next to nothing. The Alphabet Killer. Did you know who killed Carmen Colon? Please help before it happens again. Reward for the information, total $6,000 before secret witnesses. No clue is too small. Phone, secret witness, and stuff. So, in an attempt to locate the killer, 10-year-old Carmen, who was raped and then strangled, a local citizen group in the corporation and Rochester police erected 5 billboards near her home asking for any clues. Now, the Alphabet murders occurred in the early 1970s in Rochester, New York. The killer alias comes from his choice of victims. He's only choice victims of whom were young girls. With the first and last name beginning with the same letter, the Alphabet Killer, 3 victims were each raped, strangled, and while there are several witnesses, including several motorists who saw the 10-year-old Carmen half naked on the side of the road, attempt to escape from the killer, police have never managed to close this case. However, police did have several persons of interest in this case, one who was connected as recently 2011. However, none of the four men considered by authorities could be linked to the crimes, though one was sentenced to death for the murder of the sex workers in Nevada. Instantly, all of those victims also had legitimate names. West Mesa bone collector, still missing unidentified women. So those story. Now, West Mesa bone collector is thought to be responsible for death of 11 women, right, and linked to 13 women still missing. Albuquerque Police Department. With a nickname that seemed as much made for movies, the poster as police investigation, so-called the West Master Bone Collector, may be currently active in the town Albuquerque, New Mexico, or anywhere else for the matter. Now, the mysterious killer hit the spotlight in 2009 when police found 11 bodies buried in the area of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Following the tip, a woman had noticed a human femur bone uncovered from the former construction site. Police excavated the area and discovered the bodies of the women who'd been reported missing since 2003 and 2005. However, there were at least 13 other missing women who may also potential have been victims of the West Mass bone collector. Report missing as recently 2006. Now, police consider several suspects, but the lack enough evidence to make a strong case against anyone recency. Those theories have suggested that the West Mass bone collector may actually be multiple people running sex trafficking ring, possible because of many of the victims were involved in sex work. As recently of 2021, police confirmed that the case is still active, though despite the police receiving roughly 20 to 30 tips per year, no new evidence has moved this case along. Reward for useful information currently has $100,000. Servant girl inhaler. One of America's first known serial killer was Servant Girl. And hard to say the last one. As he was collected, the parlance of the time that killed 7 women and 1 man in Austin, Texas. Between December 1884 and December 1885, all the victims were decimated domestic staff, either killed while sleeping or dragged out of their beds and killed outside their homes. In one night, December 24th, 1885, the killer murdered 3 victims with an axe, a signature that earned him as more potential correct nickname, the Austin Axe Murderer. Because this case is nearly 125 years old, police record are spotty, though a New York Times article from December 26, 1885, wrote that more than 400 people have been arrested in conjunction with the case. Modern researchers have suggested that the Austin axe murderer may be none other than Jack the Ripper himself, who spent in London into a panic just 3 years later in 1888. But realistic, the true servant girl was luckily local Nathan Elgin, who was only had 4 toes and 1 foot, matching the footprints found at the most murder case scenes. Now, Elgin was killed by the police officer John Bacon in 1886. Bacon shot him after responding to help a girl who'd been dragged from saloon by a drunk man who was beating her up, and the girl name was Julia. Fortunately, given how long ago the case occurred, he's most certainly no longer operating. For the Long Island Killer, the Suffolk County Police. Crime scene mapping beach, Gilgo Beach death information at Ocean Park, Babylon, New York. The Long Island killer went relatively unnoticed until discovery of Shannon Gilbert by the Gilgo Beach in 2010 led to more bodies. Now, apparently, the name Long Island Killer is the unknown murderer who has been killing in New York from 1996 and possibly the present. Somewhere between 10 to 17 murders can be counted to the Long Island Killer. And since he may or may not still be operating, he's one of the most recent serial killers in America to remain at large. Authorities knew very little about the suspect, speculation that he was likely a white male in his 20s or to the 40s. Intensive knowledge of the enforcement operation technology, which will explain how he successfully avoided the capture. Through the Long Island Killer, he has at least 12 people police were unaware that so many of the prior disappearance and the murder we linked until 2010 disappeared Shannon Gilbert. While searching the area she likely disappeared, the police comes across not just her body, but also 10 victims buried under the sand on Long Island Beach. Suspect charged in 2023. In July 2023, the man named Rick Human, I think he says, was arrested for 3 of the murders associated with the Long Island Killer. In January 2024, he receives 4 charges. In June 24th, 2 more charges were added. Rex had pleaded not guilty as of the time of the publication. He has not been convicted of any other crimes. The Black Jeweler. The age possession sketch from 2018 is based on original concept sketch left from 1975 and shows that the Black Jeweler may have aged over the years. San Francisco Police Department. Now, the jeweler could perhaps had more flattering nickname like the artist or the sketcher had been kinder to the male model who posed for him. But instead, his sexual assault and stab the untimely killing somewhere between 6 to 14 victims in San Francisco from January 1974 to September 1975. Several men disappeared from the city gay community, and several more were injured or the victims of attempted murder. Though the San Francisco has always been quite liberal, members of the LGBTQ community were generally not accepted into San Francisco mainstream community in 1975, leading many of the killers surviving the victims inclined to cooperate with the police, fear of being out. As a result, there was very little information for authorities to go on the case remains open and unsolved. However, unlike many cases on the list, police may be close to solving decades-old mystery. More victims have been willing to come forward in the last few years. And thanks to the DNA fingerprint evidence, authorities have said they narrowed down a person of interest who still resides in San Francisco, and currently $200,000 reward for anyone that helps find the final piece of evidence to prosecute this case. Well, we already know about the Zodiac Killer, several stories on that one already, and the Jack the Ripper story. So, won't go over those. because we already know about those cases. But I figure going out ones we know and stuff. Hey, Mustang, Jason, Gibbo isn't in here. He only comes in and leaves, and just to make it look like he gives a shit. He's just a. So there you go. There's the story of that, and I'll find more. But hey, thanks for coming, Mustang and Jason. Um, Anybody else? All right, Quest Gibbo. So you all have a nice night.